So are we going to have any shows this year? Yes, we're going to have shows this year. In fact, we're having a show tonight. We're having a show right now. We're just starting up, and hopefully we're going to have all kind of people, as seeing us tonight and as our guests on Facebook Live. Oh, well, you and I have a really boring show. Well, no, there's going to be other people on the show today. Well, oh, I mean, we're going to have Billy Tuggle on the show. I don't know him. Well, no, we're going to have Billy Tuggle. Who said he could be on my show? This is not your show. This is my show. How can I have my own show? Well, that's a little bit complex why you can't have your own show. And I need to make a slight adjustment here because we have an echo and I just figured out where it's coming from. So we're going to go there and make an adjustment there. Okay, and now I have to go check something over here. Dave really doesn't know what he's doing. He's just pretending to. He's trying to impress the ladies out there. I don't really have to do that because I'm okay with the egg layers. Okay, that's our Zoom feed. Our Zoom feed's is going okay. Let me check our sound really quick. Again, this is Dave pretending he knows what he's doing. Okay, I could hear some sound. So there's this Billy Tuggle guy. Yes, we're gonna have Billy Tuggle on. We're gonna have Billy Tuggle on, and then we're going to have the talented and entertaining and charming Pamela Miller on. So she's a really funny poet, and she has lots of stuff to say. Lately, she's been going into a new thing during the lockdown that she's under because of the coronavirus. There's a coronavirus. Yes, but you don't have to worry about it. You have to worry about the bird flu. What's a bird flu? Well, you might have to wear a mask one of these days and stuff like that. But we're gonna be, and then we're gonna have Gay Guard-Chamberlin on. She has a book, which I happen to have a copy of, called Red Thread Through a Rusty Needle, and it's a really good book. Does she write about birds? Yeah, she writes. She has a couple bird poems, and I don't know if anybody else is going to have any bird poems tonight. Um, I look like the studio is underwater. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's a little problem with our feed, and I can't fix it right now. Gay's watching us. Where's she? You're gonna meet her later on, and you know you're gonna enjoy tonight's show. How do you know? I never liked anything. Well, um, you're gonna like Billy, and I'm gonna bring Billy Tuggle up in a minute. Who is Billy Tuggle? Well, he's a poet. He's a Chicago poet. He's been around for a long time, and what Billy has really done for people is inspired a lot of other poets to be poets, and teaching them, the ins and outs of poetry, and he's a very inspiring poet. So he's one of the more important poets in the city. Does he write bird poetry? I don't know. He's not a good poet unless he writes bird poetry. Okay. We'll see. Let me see if I get a little bit better here. And no, that's about as good a feed as we're going to get right now. We might be getting some interference from somewhere, and might be getting some interference from there. And I really can't do that right now. But next show, I'll try to. I'll be aware of the fuzziness and try to do it. But right now, I want to stop talking because we got Gay Guard-Chamberlin and Sheila Donovan watching us, and we got 4 other viewers on screen. So I'm going to bring on tonight's first guest. He is the star of Stage and Screen and many other places. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Billy Tuggle.
What's happening, Dave? How are you?
I'm doing great actually. I've been really busy. I had a really cool week last week. I took my 11-year-old nephew and my 7-year-old nieceling, and we went down to Kentucky. I know I wasn't supposed to, but we went down to Kentucky and we built dog cages at a dog shelter. Um,
Nice.
and we also searched for fossils along this 350, 350 million year old coral reef that we found. It was the
Oh
coolest
wow.
thing in the world. So I was looking,
Hey,
I was looking for fossils with kids.
that's good exercise. I mean, as long as you're not all in people's faces and a few paces away,
We,
there's really nothing wrong with that.
we
Yeah.
saw hardly anybody on the way.
Yeah.
We went to we, we ate at drive-throughs and just basically stopped at gas stations and people in Kentucky don't like to wear masks. I found out.
I hear.
So even though they have a really low infection rate down there, they just wander around. But so I mean, I've been going on adventures like I always do. I haven't been able to completely stop going on adventures. um, anyways, what I was talking earlier, I don't really know that much about Billy Tuggle. So let's talk about where you've come from and who you are and stuff like that. You're a native Chicagoan, right?
Yeah, born and raised on the South Side.
Okay. Okay. Where did you go to school?
Um, okay, well, first of all, let me untangle an untruth.
Untruth.
I was not completely raised on the South Side. I am a native South Sider, and my entire family's here. I spent 10 years between the ages of 4 and 14 exiled in the South suburbs, University Park, which at the time was named Park Forest South,
Hmm.
right on the Cook County, Will County border. And I went
Real far
to
south.
Yeah, not quite Kankakee South, but far south enough. End of the line, not only end of the line Metro South, but we were not even Richton Park was the end of the line before we moved. Before we moved to University Park, and then after that, they finally expanded the train line out there. But I'm a '70s baby. I was born in 1971. I was 50 in about a month. Um, in the mid '70s, we moved out to University Park, and I went to grade school in Moni. It was Busta Moni. It was amongst the first black kids to integrate Moni Elementary School in District 201U,
Wow.
the Creek Moni District. And when I moved back into the city, I went to Kenwood Academy at 50, what is it? Oh, 5015 South Shaka Khan Way, right over in the Kenwood Hyde Park area. And that's kind of, I mean, I've always been a city kid. I spent summers and weekends and stuff like that. My grandparents on both sides of my family on the south side being babysat by aunts and hanging out with cousins and stuff like that. So I've always very much been city people, and have lived in the city ever since I was 14 years old and high school, and have never lived outside of Chicago, even after being a kid in the burbs. Never lived outside Chicago.
Uh-huh. Did you go? But where'd you want to go to college?
I didn't care because college was not a thing to me. I spent a year at Northern Illinois, which was a waste of a lot of folks' time and money. Although the cultural education was interesting, that was in 1989 and 90 in DeKalb, and NIU was suffering from a lot of on and near campus racist BS. And so that was somewhat eye opening, but I had dealt with a lot of that stuff in the suburbs anyway when I was a kid, so that wasn't a huge deal. I really wanted to be some kind of performer when I was a teenager. I always tell this when I talk to kids. I either wanted to be Run DMC or LL Cool J, or I wanted to be Prince when I was a kid. I couldn't rap for shit. I was a pretty good writer across different um, genres and arenas of writing, but I had a decent voice. And so I sang in a couple of bands, like proto bands, goofing off and whatever. I knew I'd be a performer, but school just wasn't it. School was almost kind of like the backup things. So I went to Northern for a year and then went to the city colleges for two before I threw myself into the workforce and also into the arts sector of Chicago.
But you were on a couple different albums um, that you were singing on. I remember reading about them. What were your big accomplishments as a musician, as a rap hip hop singer? What did you consider yourself?
Well, I was never a rapper,
Hmm.
first of all. I come from hip hop culturally. Hip hop, culturally speaking, I was a graffiti writer. I was a breaker. I was a terrible rapper. I mean, I wanted to do that like every other teenager in the 80s when the genre itself was very closed in and very tight knit, even as far as the music industry goes. But I also wanted to do other stuff. Even though I was very much a writer when I was a kid, I was influenced by many styles of music. The bands that I played in were rock bands and soul bands, or
Okay.
even hybrid rock, soul, reggae bands. Like I said, I wanted to be Prince when I was a kid. I wanted to be Bob Marley when I was a kid, Stevie Wonder, the Jacksons, Shaka Khan, etc., Rufus. Um, Hip hop culturally spoke to me because it is at the time it was an urban subculture. It wasn't even about the music as much as it was about all of the activity that surrounded it. Going to the parties.
Hmm.
I was a graph writer, so not all graffiti writing kids were into hip hop music, but a lot of us were, and most of us we went to the same dances, the same parties. I went to high school with Upski, who wrote "Bomb the Suburbs," with Lavi Raven, who is actually very well known educator now. They were two of the more well known graffiti writers and cultural practitioners of hip hop at Kenwood at the time. And a lot of other kids, Kenwood became really known on the South Side as the South Side version of hip hop high school. But it wasn't really rap music and hip hop music that pushed me in direction. Now, as far as music goes, I sang background on a friend of mine's album who was doing some kind of it was kind of dance meets R&B stuff like that. I had goofed around with after not being in my own bands full time in the mid '90s. I had done some dance oriented DJ crews like funk groups, a group called Deeper Than Blue, and out of the expansion of Deeper Than Blue, my buddy DJ Motion wanted to produce us as individual acts. So I sang on a 12-inch by my buddy Das Bruce. But the things that I started doing when I began recording was after I had broken into poetry, and I was known for being from the hip hop scene and writing from that, not necessarily rapping about it, but writing non-linear, non-rhyming poetry about the environment and the scene and the things that influenced and inspired it, or the things that it caused, the inspirations that it caused. And I wrote about that, and I became in poetry, I became an open mic rat, but in the hip hop scene, I became known as a spoken word artist who uh, just did relatable shit like that. And then I ended up on several hip hop records, local artists, Vector Sigma, O Type Star. He put me on a record with All Natural, who are actually one of probably the more well known crews locally. But I've recorded and performed on a lot of shows with a lot of hip hop acts all across Chicago before I really started to make my name as a spoken word artist in like the early 2000s.
Is there any video, audio available of the early Billy Tuggle that we could have access
Audio,
to?
that audio that you can have access to, I don't know. I have to see if my buddy Bruce put the song up on YouTube, but there's a song called I Think I'm in Love, and I sing background on it. Um, More of the hip hop stuff that I've done, the more recent stuff I've done, you can find it. I'm down pretty tight with a crew called Waffle Gang Breakfast Club. I'm on their record called Eat or Die, and that was from about 7 or 8 years ago. Um, Vector Sigma's album, if you can find it anywhere, like I don't know, um, online through Reckless or like some other like used stores, because I'm pretty sure it's been long out of print. The most recent thing I've done was 2 years ago. A local MC named Tamper. Al Tamper. He has an album called Fight Back, and I performed what turned out to be the opening track on that album. And the album itself was very important because it speaks to a lot of things that are still happening, actually, culturally and politically. Um, but I continue to record whenever I get the chance to collaborate with artists of multiple genres. Masaki Araya, who does a lot of soul and R&B, and even some drum and bass production and composition. He put out an album called ME about 3 years ago, and I had two of my poems that he recorded. Just like fantastic beds of music underneath. So Trio de la Pena, Jesse de la Pena, a local to Chicago but internationally known DJ, founded the Blue Groove Collective. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm out
Yeah.
there on floating around. And, I
Wh-
mean, even in some cases, I'm just in the background of music videos.
When you started doing more spoken word material, what venues did you go to perform spoken word? Were they traditional poetry venues like the Green Mill, or were they still other
Yes.
venues?
No, they were traditional. I first got bit by the bug at the end of the Spices era. And if you don't know Spices, Spices was
Hmm.
super popular black open mic on the south side of Chicago. Uh, yeah, I made no, well, actually no, not the south side. It was
It's
down. It was
downtown.
near almost near north, like by the Chicago Avenue L station.
Hmm.
Um, I'm thinking of another open mic that I actually started going to after Spices. So
What
attending Spices literally twice.
was it? Was
But
Spices the Raccoon Club later, or was that another venue?
I do not remember because once Spices closed down, that was really at the beginning of poetry for me.
Hmm.
I was not a regular, and I was not even a regular in that area. I knew the area literally because of public transportation.
Okay.
But again, like that was kind of where I discovered, and you hear phrases like poetry slam or poetry open mic and stuff like that. This was the very, very early 90s, like 1991, 92, and I turned 21 in 91. Fast forward, excuse me, fast forward to the summer of 1994, I believe it was. No, 90, was it 94 or was it 93? Let's say 94.
Hmm.
When the Lollapalooza Festival was a traveling carnival of a
Yes.
tour
Yes.
and not a destination festival in Chicago or Rio or Paris, um, that particular year they recruited a bunch of slam poets and other spoken word artists, but mostly slam poets, to do the Right Reverend something or other's revival tent. And at the Chicago edition, I met uh, Shappy C. Schultz.
Yep.
I met Mark Smith. I met a handful of other poets, and I performed on the stage at the open mic, and later I performed in an impromptu slam early in the day, and then in an open mic middle of the day. And I was mainly there to see the bands, but I was singing in bands, so I had lyrics. I had goofed around with poetry, so I had more lyrics. I had poems, and meeting these guys and finding that there was a little bit more than a nascent scene uh, just brought me out, especially after my bands began to fail.
Yeah. There during during Lollapalooza, Lollapalooza was coming to Chicago. I think it was first time there, first or second time they were coming to Chicago, and
That was the fourth.
that was the fourth. Okay. The first
Yes.
the first National Slam was in '90. Um,
Yep.
maybe the end of no, I think it was '90 the first National Slam, and it might have been the end of '89, but I think it might have been '90. And
It was
what happened?
1990.
Okay, and what happened was they asked a whole bunch of slam poets in Chicago to go out and find performers for Lollapalooza. And Mark was one of them. Lisa Buscani was one of them.
Yeah.
Maybe Pat Smith was one of them. I remember competing myself at the Bop Shop, and the
Hmm.
competition for that was extremely fierce. And I know that one event launched the careers of so many different Chicago poets. and they got their big chance. They got their big chance to be in front of that big audience, and and
Mhm.
and they really rose to the occasion. I thought Chicago did great then, and there was dozens of people that were able to do this, and I didn't know you were one of them.
Well, I wasn't there for the Bop Shop event. I was at Lollapalooza. Again, I'm I'm a music fan. I went for the festival, but
Okay.
I also knew that the revival tent was there, so I had a couple of things in my backpack to read.
Uh,
So no, I wasn't. I only heard about the Bop Shop event. I was not nearly that deep into the poetry scene to even know about it at all. I
okay.
met people when they were at the festival itself. That whenever that summer was, '94. Um, so that was my entry, and also hearing MTV had started to in that time in that era. MTV had started to talk a lot about spoken word and slam,
Mm,
and they had talked to Bob Holman, Maggie Estep, Reggie Gaines, and I started hearing their records and just hearing a lot of other stuff. By '94, '95, and after um, going and meeting a lot of these cats at Lollapalooza around the same time, one of my last things I had done as a vocalist was me and a couple of friends, we had gone to Rogers Park to go to No Exit for the music open mic on a
uh-huh.
Tuesday night. And we performed there. It was fun. And we also found out that there was a poetry open mic there on Wednesday. So around that same time, it was kind of a whirlwind of things. Uh, I turned 24 years old, moved out of my parents' house, and lived 4 blocks from the Green Mill. Had already met Mark, so went to the Uptown for the Uptown Slam. Started going to Wicker Park for another level at Lit X,
At least
and
X.
also
Okay.
some readings that were along Milwaukee Avenue at some loft spaces.
Mm,
But that was when I discovered Estelle's.
okay. I was doing Estelle's from 93 to 95, maybe 93 to 96, I think I was doing Estelle's. And then after me there was somebody else, and then after them was Shappy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Estelle's was on North Damon in Milwaukee. It was a great corner. It was ground zero for poetry for a while in Chicago. North
Yep.
Damon in Milwaukee. There was poetry at Estelle's. There was poetry at Lit X. There was poetry at the Borderline, which is right there on the borderline. There was poetry at that time at the Bop Shop. Jackie Wolk was running a reading at a place called Kill the Poets.
Yep.
Marvin Tate was running a reading at the Bop Shop. We still had the Green Mill going on, and little venues were popping up all over the place. It was like
At
it was one of the best times for Chicago poet, the growth of Chicago poetry that there had
yeah,
been, and that mixing of venues did wonders for all of us.
simultaneous to Lit X, where I met both Mario, who's kind of like my main mentor into the Chicago scene.
Mm,
I also met Tina Howell. Tina would co-host a reading at the loft space of DJ Jeff Alvarez, which was right down Milwaukee from the Six Corners. I was a regular there and at Lit X, and being a regular at Jeff's space was where I met Anacron, who introduced me in '97 or '98 to the new reading at the Mad Bar called Mental Graffiti.
okay.
And
I
that was my entrance into not only mental graffiti and like deep into Chicago, and then mental graffiti became my home venue for slam for years.
mm,
But also, it was my nexus between both Chicago's written and spoken poetry scenes and Chicago's hip hop scene. Because that reading at the readings at Lit X and at Jeff Alvarez's space were frequented by a lot of breakers, DJs, a lot of rappers who were like not just doing like rap and even a cappella, but like straight like non-linear poems and things like that. Guys like Dennis Kim, who we know Dennis Kim as a poet through slam and I was born with two tongues, but Dennis is also a highly successful MC with not only solo but with the group Typical Cats.
I didn't know that about
That
Dennis.
whole scene, yeah, that whole scene was nascent for writing performers, whether you were in music, in bands, in hip hop, or whether you were a performance poet or even a written poet, just poetry, whatever it was. If you were a writer performer, Wicker Park, it definitely helped to inspire, if not create, a lot of people in the
Hmm.
'90s. But that's where I landed after I found the poets and things like that. But I also found in one ear in Rogers Park when it was on Wednesday nights at no exit before it got to the Heartland Cafe.
That
Long before I was a regular there.
that was in '95 is
Yeah.
when you started going to In One Ear.
Hmm.
Okay. And you became a co-host basically at In One Ear, because
Eventually.
In One Ears grew to be a really large venue. Let's call it that way.
Well, what's funny is that by the time I got to in one year, I became a regular and hung out a lot around 2004, 2005. By the time I became a co-host in 2009, 2010, that was when in one year began, and like the Heartland did a lot of the grassroots type events around Rogers Park. That's when they began their decline.
Uh,
That they had already started their decline. When I was a regular there, still like 2003, 2004, before I became part of the crew, that was when they were still having blowout crowds on Wednesday nights and just having ridiculous numbers of people still in there at 1 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, yeah. When did you first get involved in slam? When was the first slam
Um,
that you went to?
After seeing the poets at Lollapalooza, and you, I'd heard the word batted around for about 5 years at that point. Coincidentally enough, in '95, when I was 24, was when I moved out of my parents' house, which actually is this very same house. I live in it now, raising a family. Um, when I moved out, uh, I ended up living in an apartment 5 blocks from the mill. My buddy Bruce, Das Bruce, who's a vocalist and a poet and writer who I worked at Tower Records with, he was like, "Oh, we need to go to the mill and check out the open mic and the poetry slam." So I went. Uh, it was I enjoyed the poets. Always enjoyed the feature performer. I did not dig the slam the
Okay.
first few times. And matter of fact, I didn't dig the slam at all at Green Mill. And once I discovered that slam was bigger than Green Mill, this was after learning about Saul Williams. This is after going to like discovering Mental Graffiti in Chicago and how they did slam. I took the game itself a little bit less seriously, but I found it to be a very welcoming laboratory. So I became kind of a regular in Poetry Slam, probably like 1998, 99, when the National Poetry Slam came to Chicago in '99 was the first time that I knew that in '98 it came in '99, but in '98 was when I kind of began to learn that this was a thing that existed not only outside of Chicago or New York City and a few other big cities, but that it had kind of moved itself into various pockets of like not just North America but the world. And they had this like big annual festival, so it began to intrigue me a little bit more. And so I hung around a little bit at the '99 Nationals and heard all these stories about 2000 in Providence. So at this point, I'm a regular at Mental Graffiti. By 2001, the festival was in Seattle. My mom lived in Seattle, so I didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money other than a
Uh
plane
huh.
ticket and maybe a time to go stay. So I went, visited my mom, and attended my first like whole for the entire week National Poetry Slam, and have been hooked ever since. The festival died out a couple years ago, but I
Yeah.
attended everyone from 2001 until 2018,
That
and
that
meeting poets from all over the world.
that 1999 National Slam in Chicago was a big deal for every poet in Chicago. We were able to showcase all our venues. We had different um, we had different readings at the different venues. the ones coming up to it, with the preliminaries and stuff like that. There was poets from all over the city coming in. We had a huge book fair at Roosevelt University. We had
Yeah.
probably 40, 50 different cities here in Chicago, and we were able to meet people from all over the country.
Oh yeah.
People like us that were just doing poetry on stage, and that again, like the mingling in Wicker Park that we had of different poetry venues, the mingling of different cities was important to us. I'm still in touch with some of the people that I met back in '99. Um,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and and Mark, Mark and the Slam Committee, um, Emily Calvo, Henry, and everybody else did a great job of coordinating the whole thing.
Hmm.
I think I was a Slam judge at the Subterranean, and I helped run the reading at Chopin because there
Okay.
was a big reading at Chopin there.
Yeah.
So
Well, at that time, I didn't know really what it was, and I ended up. Uh, I saw two bouts, and I thought it was amazing.
yeah, it's just this
And I
wow thing.
attended. Yeah, and not ironically, not ironic at all, because of Anachron's invitation, I ended up at the hip hop open mic and ended up meeting poets that came from a lot of the same background that I did. So I got a chance to see some of everybody and meet some of everybody, and then narrow it a little bit to some of everybody that wasn't from my city doing the same things that I was doing. It was definitely an amazing time, and it was an amazing time to follow up by going to I missed Providence, but then Seattle in 2001, Minneapolis in 2002, and the 2003 Nationals that was also here in Chicago was also a pretty heady event
hmm
itself.
Not not
That
not
was really the last time that it was in Chicago before 2018, and the last time that we really got a chance to show off in front
yeah.
of a festival audience like that.
I think was 1999 was that were the finals for that at the Chicago Theater,
Yeah.
and then we had finals at the Chicago Theater, and then we had finals at the Smart Bar for another one in Chicago, and then we had
That was for the Smart Bar. That was the Indie Finals in 2003.
okay
The overall finals was at Navy
at
Pier.
Navy Pier at the Shakespeare Theater at Navy Pier. The just production quality of Navy Pier was great. I mean, the lighting and stuff like that was fantastic. I
Hmm.
remember sitting in the balcony for the at the Chicago Theater, and just we had all kind of Chicago poets up there, and wow, we showed
Yeah,
off. We represented our city pretty well. um, so did
and we managed to do the same thing a few years ago too.
mhm. But yeah, I think the slam was really important too because I real and a lot of people would disagree with me with this, but I think that the and Samuel Lynch is watching us, and I think
What's
that
up, Sam?
I think that the slam created leaders and somebody that said, well, this is somebody we should emulate. In addition to just being a good time and a good performance venue, I actually think that that competition made us stronger poets. Um, I
Um, I think it did. I think that a lot of people go back and forth with that. Um, there are some people who aren't built for competition. There are some people who are not built for adulation.
yeah,
And I'm not. It is. This is not personal at all. I'm not naming any names. But the best part of slam is that I've seen people get very, very big headed, and I've seen them come back from it. I've been around long enough,
hmm
so there's definitely no shade at all when I say that. But some people I've seen people go real, really, really far the other direction, the wrong direction, and also because slam has created a subculture, it's created a window for some very ugly people to get inside,
yeah.
and that's with society in general. That happens pretty much anywhere. The problem is that we created such a feel good subculture that it was not as well policed as it could have been.
Definitely
So
not. Um,
I think we've learned a lot. I think that there's been a big flip in what the national culture has become as well as locally. And so for me, I enjoy it. I've been around it long enough to where I'm happy to see a whole lot of change come through it, especially because of the fact that I've been in it literally half my life.
yeah, and I think things like Louder Than a Bomb have been extremely successful in what they've done for people, and you've passed on the inspiration you got from other people to a lot of young poets. I mean, this is one of your things that you're known for is to go out there and inspire other poets. Um, is how is that a mission of yours, or is that just something that Billy Tuggle does as a side effect of his performances?
Um, I think that my inner kid,
You're
uh,
okay.
I've, I've, I've never been an exclusionist. I've never been an elitist. I've always, if I think something is cool, I've always been the one to be like, "Hey, come here, let's check this out." So from that perspective, I've always kind of been open to experiences and experiencing people and pulling people into those experiences. Having said that, when you find newbies,
Mm-hmm.
it could be another 50-year-old or a 40-year-old, or because I didn't get deep into the scene and think this was a thing until I was in my 30s. But if I find kids, and because we do this with youth poetry and even things like drama class and stuff like that now, if I find kids, whether that means grade school, high school, or college age kids who are into this and do this, and they like what I do, they're easy to communicate with. There's no reason why you can't share the gift, craft, the facts. There's no reason that you can't. It is kind of inherent, but also I have mentors that taught me that you don't really do anything until you help other people do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the coolest thing to happen in being in slam for a quarter of a decade is watch the the beginnings and the growth of youth poetry slam, and literally there are adults that I have helped usher into this craft that are 30 years old now, that not only can I be proud of watching them grow and do things, but also we can work together and exchange resources, and we end up working together. I founded the Chicago Four-Star Poetry Club with Andy Calth-Rufos. Andy was 20 going on 21 at the time, and I was just about 40. Andy was one of the voices, but also one of the people who uh, we exchange voices and
Mm-hmm.
ideas. And Four-Star ranges in age right now from 50 to 25. There's four of us currently act as active poets, but the idea is that we all work together, and I watch these other young men and women grow up from teenagers and into uh, this craft and this scene as writers, performers, as well as organizers. That's the part that's most gratifying, is not just seeing them do things, but to actually work with them as they do things.
Okay, but Billy, I'm going to have some other guests on tonight, and I wanted to hear some of your poetry, but I'd like to get you back towards the end of January, so we can talk a
Sure.
little bit more about inspiring kids and and teaching other people how to be better poets. But why don't you give us like
Right
two?
on.
Why don't you give us two poems, and we'll have you back again at the end of January? Would that be okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I've got the time. Um
Give us some
oh,
poetry.
okay. This one is from an anthology that came out late last year from Great Weatherford Media called The Escape Wheel. The poem itself, I wrote a few years ago for a little event that our friend John Shirk threw. The poem is called If Jesus Walked. If Jesus walked into a bar, turned wine into water, sat down to watch a poetry slam, would you notice him? Can't imagine that he would stand out. Don't know whether he would be thrifter, hipster, or old Navy chic, but I imagine him applauding the open mic politely. Maybe he'd be noticed if he were given a scorecard, might have the pensive look of, listen to the poem, make you appreciate your 7.9 a little more. He would not likely stand out without a smart ad campaign, including a social media blitz, talk show jaunt, book tour. You know, the book of perennial top seller, perpetually reinterpreted, institutionalized, various perspectives of the young philosopher, carpenter, rabbi, healer, doing work that so many look outside themselves for. It's not their fault. The editors left out so much of the instructions. These miracles may or may not be allegory or exaggeration, teaching before preaching, ministering to the sick, witnessing before the poor, showing love to the despised. Notice the lessons left behind in a decaying tenement or foxhole, tethered to life support machine under the rubble of an earthquake. Instead of sticking our hands into the rubble to find signs of life, we high sign like high fives after touchdowns, Academy Awards, and elections. Who would Jesus vote for? Who did he pick in the big game? How many points did he give? Does he help carry the burden of a blockbuster box office? Would Jesus oversimplify your unchristianity? Would he remind you that he wasn't even a Christian and that we're all children under the sun? Maybe claim these images and words holy. Or would you see Jesus walk right into you in the darkness of war and poverty in a dim subway tunnel, or shouting 10, 10, 10 at a poetry slam at the end of a bar while turning wine into water? Thank you.
I'm the only
So
one
yeah,
who
that's
gets to
from an
clap at these
anthology.
things.
So that's from an anthology from Great Weather for Media. While I am grabbing this other piece, my daughter said, show the people this. Carmody always says, tell all the poets I love them. And so that's art from my daughter Face. I will do this. I heard you say that Sam Lynch is watching.
Yes,
I
he
would
is.
like to shout out Sam. Sam is my brother from way back in the District 201U days at Deer Creek Junior High School. And I believe if he is at home, that means he's in Japan. So we are on both sides of the globe right now.
Wow, there's a globe. I thought the Earth was flat.
Only on days ending in Q.
Okay.
All right. So since I talked about my hip hop background, and some people might not realize that I'm not necessarily talking about rap music, I will finish my segment with a portion of a segment of poems, a series of poems that I call the graffiti monologues. The craft of motion tagging is a dance with gravity, a battle with inertia itself, rubber wrist, granite shoulder. When the train hits that curve at 30 miles per hour, knees bent, lean with the rumble and sway, maintain your stance and apply that mean sig even as the operator applies brakes. Olympic balance beam shit. This craft is muscle memory, guiding perfect penmanship even when the lights go out, block stars go all av, trying to paint the moon. These are the fabled midnight marauders. Before the cans and the walls, this autograph session is the meet and greet just outside your bedroom window. This wide tips and stickers ritual is so that you get acquainted with the style. See, we don't want to blow your minds all at once. I know, it's a stupid thing to get locked up for, but I know that it's a stupid thing to lock a kid up for when they're trapped on the outside. Tell me, what do you know about I can't do this at home, and they don't give a damn at school? This is how my homies exercised fear of being locked out of homes their families could barely afford to live in. This is the release from everyday stress of art professors saying, your abstracts contain too much city concrete. Motherfucker, I'm from the city. My name is all I have. This is meditation. Your drab walls need to be covered in promise. This is thank you or middle finger to the art critics. Rock the glove that fits. Here is where the criminals meet the artists with propellant under their tongues and fistful of style, all while using 360-degree peripheral vision to scope out rival crews and undercovers looking to blow up the spot. Keep charging them with petty crime. Tax dollars and escalating fares maintain this noise pollution, these alloyed carriages, all this iron and sweat. Some citizens autograph it a little every day. It's a better view than advertising and traffic. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Billy, we'll get you on again in a couple weeks because we got a lot more to talk about.
I have the time, my friend. Thank you very much.
But right now, I want to bring up Pam Chedick and
Miller.
Pam. Okay, I'm sorry, Billy. This is Pam Miller.
That's okay. You should know this by now, Dave.
Okay, but I
guess my audio's working.
Your audio is working. Thank you, Billy. This was wonderful. But like I said, we got a lot to talk about, so we'll have you back. And I'm having some weird stuff with the chat feed, so I can't respond to a bunch of stuff on the chat feed. But we are still online. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pamela Miller, one of the most entertaining poets on the poetry scene. We got Gay Guard-Chamberlin watching right now, Sheila Donovan, Lynn West, Samuel Lynch, and we got another dozen people or so watching us right now, at least a dozen people, unless they're hiding from me. Dan Cleary was watching us a little bit earlier, so yeah, we got some people
hi, Dan. I know Dan.
You haven't seen for a while. And who knows who's going to be watching us later on. But thank you.
Shadow knows.
Thank you for being on the show. Sorry you can't see me any better.
I see this strange orange light that's moving back. I think it's the top of your head.
That's the top of my head.
It's the top of your head. That's fascinating.
That's the top of my head. But the audience, the audience could see both me and you really well.
Excellent.
How many books do you have now? You got tons of books out there, and they're all really good.
Oh, thank you. I've got 4 books so far. The most recent one, someone always told me if you're doing a reading or something, you have to display your product. So here is my product. My most recent book is Miss Unthinkable from Mayapple Press. Like I said, I have 3 previous books, and I have a 5th collection that I finished last year, and I'm kind of just started sending that out to publishers. It's tentatively titled How to Do the Grease Wombat Slide.
Okay.
And then I'm also working on a manuscript for a visual poetry chapbook. I've been working with visual poetry for about a year and a half after taking a workshop with the great Emily Calvo about how to incorporate visual art into your poetry. So that's kind of a new direction for me.
Sheila Donovan says hi.
Hi, Sheila.
And Lynn West wants to hear some of your poetry. And Tony's watching. You don't know Tony, but he's watching you.
Tony who?
Tony Mraz. He's a teacher from Waukegan.
No, I don't know him.
And he's been very supportive of poetry over the years. But I remember.
Hi, Tony.
What was your first book?
It was called Fast Little Shoes.
And it had that red cover on it.
Yeah, it came out in '86. It was published by the sadly now defunct Erie Street Press out of Oak Park, run by Henry Kranz. He's still around. The press isn't.
Well, that was actually my first introduction to you. I bought a copy of Fast Little Shoes at Left Bank Bookstore, which is
Yeah,
right there in the
yeah.
neighborhood. And
Yeah, because the Erie Street Press used to have a regular poetry series up there.
and before I read in public anywhere, before I really started reading like Chicago poetry magazines or anything like that, I was reading Fast Little Shoes.
Oh,
And
wow.
and there was a couple poets who I know now as people that were just like disembodied non-humans because they were because you know how
Okay, great. What, you mean like lizard people or what?
dinosaur people. But
Oh, okay.
you know how authors aren't real. Um, you were one of
Until you
the
get,
you
yeah.
were one of the first authors who I met that was a real author. You and
Oh,
about five or
wow.
six other people, but I
Very
first
cool.
knew you as this person just in print with Fast Little Shoes. And
Huh.
I was looking for my copy so I could show it to the audience, but I couldn't find it because I was in
Oh,
a big rush
I
to put
didn't
my
want to
stuff
bring,
together.
I don't know. I got it in the other room. I didn't want to bring all of my, you know how when you, on TV, when they interview people on Zoom, they put like 57 copies of their book all around them in the in the background.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, we could like take an author's book and walk it across the bottom of the screen and show it to everybody
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah, I got to work on that a little bit. So you're doing this, and you've worked on this the last year. You've been taking a workshop with a new kind of poetry for you.
Well, it was only a one-shot workshop. It was at the April 2019 Chicago Poetry Fest that they used to have every year at the Harold Washington Library
Mm-hmm.
downtown. I guess they would have had it in 2020 if it wasn't for the pandemic,
Yeah,
but
they actually
that's been around a long time. So it was just like a one-shot workshop. But I had always wanted to, um, incorporate visual art into my poetry, and I could never figure out how to do it. And so Emily sort of, she showed us how to take a piece of
this is This
visual
is
art.
Emily Calvo, Emily Thornton
Yeah,
Calvo. Um,
yeah.
I'm,
But
I'm,
she kind of showed how you can write a poem and kind of text box it. I don't know if people how visible this is going to be, but they kind of, well, this is not visible at all, but they kind of look like this. I've been downloading these free access stock photos of guys, and then I write a poem based on the photo, and oh man, I don't know if anybody can see this,
we could
but
we
the
could
poems all have titles like Mr. This and Mr. That. So it's just been a very kind of fun series to work on.
I remember you've chosen very visible covers, very good covers for your books. Like
Yeah, a lot of times, most of my book covers have been designed by people I know.
mm,
It's great to know a lot of visual artists. My husband did the cover for my first book. The second book, Mysterious Coleslaw,
I'm thinking of
the cover.
Recipe for Disaster
Yeah,
is a
that was
really
done.
cool cover.
That was done by the great Janet Block, who used to be a very prominent member of Woman Made Gallery in Chicago, and then I think she moved out of town. And then this cover.
Dina Stewart says to say hi to Pam.
Oh, hi, Dina. Um, this one was done by again by somebody I know. So it's like if you ask your friends to do the cover for you and you pay them a couple of $100, you can have more quality control, and you don't, have to sort of worry about the publisher trying to give you a cover that you don't like.
Hmm. Well, us publishers like to do that.
Yeah, well, I don't mean you.
I I remember there was one cover that we worked on, and I wanted pages on a wall, and the author did like these little square things, and I'm like, no, I want it to look like the pages are falling off the wall and just falling down onto the floor, and she did that, but then she wrote lines from all the poems in little tiny words inside each of the pages. But
Well, it
she
must have been impossible to read, right?
it is impossible to read unless you have a magnifying glass, but what
Yeah,
she did is she
yeah.
made all kind of misspellings and stuff like that as an act of revenge and rebellion.
Oh,
But
no.
it turned out great. Book covers are so much fun. Is it fun to publish a book?
Uh, I guess, yeah. I mean, you want to, the whole point is to get your stuff out there and have, a nice looking product that, that people will buy. But, it's hard to get, in some cases it's hard to get a book published, with my first book, again in 86, I thought, well, I'm not all that famous. Nobody's heard of me. So probably the only way I'm going to get a first book published is if someone I know does it. So I had been publishing a lot of things, again at Lucky Star
Lucky Star that was published
magazine.
by Erie Street Press back in the
Erie Street
80s.
Press, yeah, the great Henry Kranz. And so I asked him, because he seemed to like my stuff, and I was, kind of friendly with some of those guys. I asked him if he would do my book for me, and I managed to talk him into that. But after that, I had to, you know, I wanted to go with somebody else for the next book, and you have to send out a lot of queries. I know some poets like Bill Yarrow. I mean, people just come to him out of the blue and ask him to do books, but no one ever did that with these. So, it's hard, sending out the queries and the sample poems and um, getting rejected. But eventually, you connect with somebody.
Hmm.
Though it seems to be a little different now because my last book was published, I think 2013, and now that I'm starting to look around, it seems to be a lot different. That everyone it wants to charge a reading fee, and they want you. You used to be able to just send a query, a pitch letter, and some sample poems, and now they want you to write a
Yeah.
two-page description. They want to see your marketing plan. They want a
It's
three-page letter explaining why you want. So it's kind of different than it used to be. But
it's harder to differentiate poets. You want to work with a poet who's going to put a lot of work into their book too. I mean, that's the thing. You're kind of not just publishing the work anymore, just because there's so much work out there, and it's so easy for people to self-publish. You want a poet who's going to put themselves out there and really help with the marketing. So I think
yeah,
that's
well,
probably
I've always done that. I mean, readings is really the primary way that you sell
hmm
books. So
say hi say hi
I've
say hi to Vito Carly.
Vito, hi baby,
Hi Vito, thanks for tuning
hi.
in. Uh,
Yeah, thanks, Vito.
we miss you, Vito. um, so where were Henry Krantz was the first time you had a book published.
Yeah,
Erie Street Press. You were published
yeah,
in Lucky Star. Um,
yeah.
what was your earliest performances that you did? What kind of venues did you read at?
You know,
Um,
you mentioned you were going to ask me this. You know, I have been kicking around the Chicago poetry scene for so many years. I can't even remember half the stuff. I was sitting down trying to remember the names of all of these, long defunct venues, and was talking about it with my husband. He said, "Well, there was that place that was on Milwaukee near. I don't know what, but but there were some places I remember. I did a lot of readings at what used to be known as Lynx Hall, which was absolutely the worst place. I don't know how many people remember this,
it
but
was hot.
it was the
It was in a
well, and
basement.
also they had that really loud L train that would go right by the window about every 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And so it would just drown everything out, and you had to either stop reading and wait for the train to go by, or you had to raise your voice and sort of scream over the L.
Yeah, but it
I'm
was,
trying to think.
but it was great.
I remember a place called Name Gallery,
Uh-huh.
which was kind of just south of downtown. That was a really nice space.
Was there any place that
You mentioned the left. What?
was there any place that you performed at every week, um, week after week to
No,
kind of?
I'm not really an open mic poet. I'm not a real prolific writer. I'm very slow. So, I know so many poets who I'm jealous of because they could just crank it out, but I'm very slow, and so I don't always have tons and tons of new work to get out there every week. But there were a lot of series that I read at. Kind of one thing I wanted to talk about is women poets in Chicago. Back in like the late 80s and through the 90s, early 2000s, I was writing a lot of feminist poetry. And I still do, but not as much. I was really, really into it back then. And there were a couple of feminist literary organizations that I was members of, where I performed a lot. And one was, my earbuds are falling out, the Chicago chapter of the Feminist Writers Guild,
Okay.
which was started by people like Julie Parson and I think Beatrice Badikian
Hmm.
was an early member of that. And, they were just really great at promoting women's writing, not just poetry. In Chicago in 87, I think it was, they did this really landmark anthology of stories and poems by Chicago women called Naming the Daytime Moon, which was a really nice book. Do you remember that? Anybody remember that?
I remember that. I think I have a copy of it.
Yeah, so I had a poem in there. I was also kind of an early member of the poetry writing stuff at Woman Made Gallery, and of course they're still around.
Hmm.
But I remember when I first joined, they didn't even have any literary artist members or literary programming. They were strictly this wonderful visual art gallery. But eventually, I guess they started saying they wanted to promote writing by women. So I remember I went to the first ever poetry reading they ever had at Woman Made, which was the great Angela Jackson, who of course has just been named
Poet
Illinois
laureate.
Poet Laureate. Yeah, which I was rooting for her from the beginning. She's just so perfect for that. So I went to that reading, and so afterwards I kind of went up to the director at that time, was now retired, Beata Minkowski, And I said, well, I'm a Chicago poet who has a couple of books out. Do you think I could read here? And she was like, well, gee, we've never heard of you, so, but she said, you know what, we're thinking of having an open mic in a couple of, why don't you come and try out your work at the open mic? So I kind of said, okay, I'm going to show them. And I went to the open mic, and I deliberately read all of my real kick-ass signature poems. And so they said, well, okay, maybe we should have you read here.
They were really good about selling people's books, though.
Yeah,
selling women's books.
They had a wonderful poetry bookstore, small press women's books within the gallery. I don't know if they still have that. I haven't been there since they moved to Pilsen, because that new location is kind of hard for me to get to on public transportation, so I don't know if they still have that. But
weren't they on Prairie Avenue for a while?
Oh, they were everywhere. Yeah. They kept moving. They were in Lincoln Park, and then they were kind of in Western Avenue, and then they were on kind of Milwaukee and Chicago. So they kept moving into bigger and better, because they had a lot of problems with some of the original spaces. They had one space where it was near that lousy artist housing that people like Dave and Badger Hernandez lived in. That terrible.
It was in the front of that. They had a nice.
It would flood all the time.
Yeah, but David still had a nice place there.
Yeah, but there were a lot of complaints from the artists about it would flood all the time. And the space that Woman Made had that was right near there had like rats that would die in the walls. So, so it took them a while to find an ideal space. But
but what are your publications that you've been most proud of? That you're if I was going to showcase, magazines and books, anthologies that you've been published in, what would you recommend would showcase your work the best? If somebody out there in Facebook land says, I need to get some Pamela Miller work, where can I get that from?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, very, very early in my career, I actually got a couple of poems published in the Paris Review, believe it or not. But that I think that was kind of a fluke. I have some stuff in the new 20th anniversary issue of After Hours that came out last summer. I publish pretty regularly in After Hours. Mm-hmm. There used to be, when I was first starting out, there was a magazine out of Roosevelt University called Oye's Review. And they published some of my stuff, and then some of the people who were editing it at that time, Al DiGenova and Pat Hertel went on to start After Hours, and I'm not in every issue of that, but I'm in quite a few issues of that.
The Oye Review is out of Roosevelt University here in Chicago. It's been around forever. And
I think it's still there.
It's still there, but the Oye Review used to take in a lot of outside poets, and they take in hardly any outside poets right now. It's mostly for Roosevelt University.
It's more of a student magazine now, right?
Yeah, but during until the beginning of the century, they were one of the top magazines in Chicago. Effie Mahopoulos had worked with them a lot. And I remember there was a slam poetry edition. Mark Smith was in there, and all kind of stuff like that. Jeff Helgeson was the faculty coordinator for a while. And I used to work with Oye at Printers Row. We used to share a table together. So yeah, Oye was a
Yeah,
really influential magazine from the people that they published. Um, you've been a Rhino before,
a couple of times. Yeah,
um, and I
I'm
remember you were in
proud of that.
the Guild Complex um,
No, I wasn't.
anniversary. You weren't in
No, no,
Stray
I
Bullets?
wasn't.
Okay.
No.
I wasn't either. I we both missed out.
No, I don't know. I just kind of didn't run with that crowd, so they never. I've always been friends with Mike Pewican, who, is running the Gill Complex now, but
Uh-huh.
kind of the people before that, I didn't really know very well, so they never asked me.
If,
Um,
if you look at the uh, Facebook feed later, there's a discussion about how to get to Woman Made Gallery.
oh, well, if you've got a car, I'm sure it's very easy, but I don't drive, so, and I live very, very, very far north.
Yeah. And
Uh,
your husband is watching us
yeah.
on Facebook too.
Hi,
Um,
dear.
and
I can't see him, but
yeah, he's saying something. I don't know if you could. I'm sorry about the visuals here, but they
I
work for
see
Facebook.
your hand waving a phone around on the top of your head, which looks kind of like Jupiter because it looks sort of orange and stripy
Yeah,
for
well,
some reason.
it looks different on Facebook. There's
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
what you look like on Facebook. If you see that at all. Um,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
maybe.
Anyways, um,
Oh, where were we?
where were we? We were going to talk about. Do you think poetry has a? Okay, right now, we're all sitting around at home, um, and we're poets, and poets are superheroes. And
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
should we superhero poets be using our superpowers for in 2021? I was going to say 192021. In 2021, what are us superhero poets supposed to use our powers for? To entertain?
Well, one thing,
To
all of the above. To you know, one thing I've always thought about poetry is that it can make people look at situations or life in like maybe a different way than the way they would always look at it. I like humorous A lot of my poems are funny. I think there's nothing wrong with poetry that makes people laugh.
mm-hmm.
I even like. I think there's a place for silly poetry, and I think certainly in the past year we've all needed some good laughs. I think, I have never been able to write political poetry. I have tried, so help me God. I just can't do it. It always comes out really heavy-handed, but I really admire all the poets who have been speaking truth to power and writing poems about the political mess that we're in and about, injustice and about, um, all the things that need to be better about this country. I really admire those people. I think that that's very, very important to do that. I mean, I personally can't do it,
do,
but
do you have any poetic plans for 2021? You
um,
have you have a new book that you're looking for a publisher.
sending around, working on the visual poetry chapbook. I think I have about 18 poems completed, and I think for a chapbook I would want maybe about 30. One thing that I've been doing, um, because of the pandemic, I've gotten involved in a couple of different poetry chat groups with colleagues and friends of mine, not necessarily critique groups, but just things where we Zoom and we just share poems. We talk about poetry. You know, we say, gee, what do you do when you're really stuck for the last line of a poem and you just can't, you know? So
Yeah.
I actually am in two groups like that, and it's just really great to just, you know, be connected with other poets and just, you know, talk about the craft of poetry and share new works. So
What
I'm looking forward to making more of those kind of connections.
I have another guest coming on tonight in a little while. Will you read us some of your poetry, please?
Okay. How much time do I have? I don't want to.
Maybe 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay. A couple of
8 minutes.
things.
Warning to the next poet. You're going to be on in a little bit more than 8 minutes. And I think I'm going to skip talking to the bird here because um I talked to him earlier and he was a pain in the butt. And let's see who else is Lydia Gomez is out there in the Facebook land watching us.
cool.
Gay Guard-Chamberlin is out there. Lynn West is still with us. My seventh grade teacher is out there watching us. Dina
Oh,
Stewart's
my
still out
goodness.
there. Vito Carly's still out there. Vito keeps on trying to make puns, and everybody's ignoring him. And and I think
Don't feel bad.
I think Richard Schwedick is watching us too.
But he better be. That's my husband. Well, let's see. I'm going to read one from Miss Unthinkable, which is, again, my most recent book.
Who's the publisher in case somebody wanted to buy a copy out there in Facebook land?
Oh, Mayapple Press.
Mayapple Press is a really cool press. They put together
They
really
really
good
are.
quality books.
A lot of good Chicago writers like Chris Green and but you can go to their website or you can get it on Amazon.
And the layout of
this
Mayapple
poem
books
is-
are really good too. The page layout. Okay, read us a poem.
Yeah,
I'll get
they
off.
do it.
I'll sit back.
Yes, because this is a long poem and I've only got, 7 minutes?
Something like that.
Okay, well, why don't you cool your jets, Dave? And this poem is, this uses the mistranslation exercise where you take a poem by another poet written in a foreign language that you don't understand at all, and then you write a poem in English based on what these incomprehensible foreign words kind of suggest to you or sound like to you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a mistranslation of the Italian poet Eugenio Montale. 3 mistranslated love poems. And the first one is dark verse. Oh, why are my memories of you sullied with vendettas, lack of ha-ha and cheap angry treaties? Dream sequence, cue raucous music. The fugitive god of umbrellas breaks his arm and spends all night sobbing by the gate to the machine that guards the carousel of Saint Excuse Me, while the moon and I eat supper together, devouring everything. Our love was a seesaw of scatology and surprise that made us run from each other like wet cats on pontoons. Now I curse you to God while eating maraschino cherries, my fulminating frog prince, never really mine. And need a drink of water. The second one is daily training. The tortoise slow ascent of the hulking sun, the flapping of my sister's very first calendar, revolting memories of Omaha,
Omaha.
These are, well, no offense, Dave. I didn't mean you that. These are a few of my least favorite things. So I announced my gleeful game plan to kiss you till we fall out the window, till the blood in our veins boils over and we get so hot under our innovative collars, our electric sunglasses short circuit. Hear me whisper through the hole in my fire trap heart as I write you mash notes juicy as mangoes. Be my only wail. Carry me away on the stagecoach. Day after day of your own free will. Fuck me till my accessories surrender. And the third one is I can say no more. Oh, rest your worn out, nail-bitten soul 2 pincers away from mine. I'm a famished, leggy woman choking on boughs as I splash around in the primeval chowder, refusing to acknowledge God's Timex watch or the silly taunts of my mossy old lovers. Let's dance vibrantly in Hawaii, smoking the strong cigar of love. Let me shimmy in the garden of your eyelashes. Eternity is such a stingy place, nothing to live on but salads of sky, all those candlelit stairways that lead nowhere. More than this, I can't say. I'll just polish my gilded heart and leave it at your door so you can study its incandescence like Galileo. Meet me in an hour in the deepest sub-basement of your soul. Heaven's an empty dollhouse where no breeze stirs the bone-white curtains. I'd rather ride the souped-up Camaro of your hips for the rest of my red-letter days, and either you or God can do the rest.
Sorry, I'm the only one who you could hear clapping.
What?
I'm the only one you could hear clapping, but I'm sure there's people out in the audience clapping right now. Like, Vito, clap.
Okay.
I don't know if Vito's clapping or not.
I can't even hear my husband clapping in the next room.
Okay.
Do I have time for one real short one, or?
Yeah, our next poet is just about ready to get on the air. Yes, you have time for one more.
Okay.
And now, who wrote the poem about putting their spouse into the trunk? Was that you or?
That
That was
was my husband.
your husband. Okay.
Yes. Yes, writing from real life there. This is one of the visual poems, and I can't really hold it up because it's kind of dark. But it's a photo of.
You never write anything dark.
What? No, the visual
Oh,
is
okay,
dark.
okay.
I mean, it looks like this.
That's
And it's
pretty
a
dark.
Photo. It's my printer. It's a photo of footprints in the sand, and the poem is Mr. Missing. He strode into the ocean, and we never saw him again. All that remained were his ominous footprints rising from the sand like welts. He trashed his possessions, dismantled his house, bitterly burned his money like old love letters. What unspeakable skin was he shedding? Did someone command him from the sea's sub-basement, her briny anger pulling him down the beach? All we'll ever know is this. 20 years later, those prints are still there, insistent secrets blackening in the sun. So I guess that is kind of dark.
Yeah, it is. Wow. Lydia Gomez put in a
Oh,
whole bunch of uh, hands for applauding, and Sheila Donovan says, "I love the line salads of sky." Um,
oh, thank you.
in your last poem. Um, and is there any so is there any quick advice you have for a poet? And then I'm going to kick you off and bring our next guest on. Say a young poet who's just starting out. Any quick words of advice? Besides
Um,
besides besides bring back Effie Mahopoulos to inspire us to be better poets.
yeah, I would just say, read as much poetry by other poets as you can. Not so much so you can steal their ideas because you don't want to do that, but just to kind of see all the different things that poetry could do that maybe you hadn't realized that you could do with a poem.
Okay,
How's that? Does that make any sense?
that makes lots of sense. Um,
Okay.
that makes lots of sense. And can hold on for 1 second? Um, and I'm going to bring our next poet up as soon as I um, clean up a little wine spill on my keyboard.
Oh dear.
Never drink and MC at the same time.
Should I put myself on mute now, Dave?
Yes, put you on mute, and I'm going to bring our next guest on.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. I'm going to ask our next guest to unmute, and I think I asked our next guest to unmute. And
Hello.
hello, there she
Yes,
is.
hello.
There she is. I was celebrating
Dave.
having you guys all on by having a glass of Yellowtail Shiraz Cabernet mixture, and I knocked it over and almost got it onto your book. Um, this is Gay Guard-Chamberlin's book, and it's called Red Thread Through a Rusty Needle. Um, her and I do not know each other very well, um, almost not at all. I think we may have met before at at a ISPS event, um, but I'm not sure. So I want to thank you for being on the show. And this is Puddin'head Press Live. Sorry it took me so long to get you on.
That's okay.
Um,
I've been totally enjoying it, and I love Pam Miller's poetry. So thanks.
she,
It's
she,
totally enjoyable.
she's
I'm a little tired, but that's okay.
okay. I'm a little tired too.
That's all right.
Um,
Sometimes the best things get written when I'm half asleep. So maybe the same will be true of speaking. I don't know.
I had a
But yeah, we've met Dave a couple places like that, and then we have a good mutual friend who you interviewed on here not too long ago, who is an astrologer,
oh, Victoria
Vicki
Martin.
Martin.
But-
Vicki and I were actually best friends until we were 5, and she moved away. We grew up playing together, and we were actually born in the same hospital room the same day.
Wow.
So our mothers were, and we lived in the same building. So we have this like really early friendship, and I have pictures to prove it. So
How-
I'll have to email this to you sometime.
You seem so much nicer than her, though. She. Okay, Vic, is she watching?
Voices were the opposite, but I don't know what that means.
I think I need
She's
to edit
done our
this.
charts.
I think I need to edit this out later, so before
Yeah,
she
you
sees
might have to. Jeez.
it. No, she's been like a subtle influence on my life the last couple years. And she's like, you should do this, you should do that, and it's all little tweaks, especially visual tweaks. So I guess a little bit of the look of this show comes from advice from Vicky. Anyways, I wish
That's good. Yeah.
we had a little bit better look to it, but we're a little bit foggy tonight. But thanks for being on the show.
All I can see is part of your forehead now.
I know.
But you told me that I would hear you more than see you, so that's fine.
I'm like
So
a
let's
disembodied voice. But
let's talk poetry, eh?
yeah, are you a native Chicago? You are a native Chicago, and you were
Yep.
born in Hyde Park.
Yep.
Did you
Yep.
live
Born and raised in Hyde Park. lived there most of my life, and then moved to Rogers Park, and then lived in Michigan, in Kalamazoo, with my
Okay.
husband for a dozen years, and then we came back to Chicago.
So are you, right now you're in Chicago, you're not a suburbanite?
Yep.
Okay,
Nope, up in the Devon area.
okay.
Just great area.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Now,
You too.
how many books have you had?
I have one.
You have
And
one?
I published, you held it up already, but I'm going to hold it up again. Published this November of 2019. And I ended up doing this in conjunction with my sister, Anara Gard, who has her book, Hand on My Heart. And we published through the same publishing company simultaneously, and we helped each other develop our manuscripts. And put it all together. So it's been tremendous fun. Some people like Caroline Johnson from Poets and Patrons had encouraged me many years ago to write a book, and other people as well. And felt like I was slowly putting a manuscript together. But then my dad, who is going to be 95 next month and is a beautiful poet himself, really pushed that he wanted to see this. He wanted to hold it in his hands and have it, sooner rather than later. And so that really was a prime motivation. And so then Anara and I started talking about that, and one thing led to another, and we ended up doing it in conjunction. And now we perform together. We did live performances, and now we'll do them on Zoom. And there's some on YouTube, and we call those sibling revelry.
Revelry.
And,
okay.
yeah, and a friend of hers came up with that, and we really owe him for that great title. And it has been fun.
Do you
You asked if it's fun to publish a book. It has been for me.
is there a sibling rivalry between
There's a sibling
two poets?
rivalry press that two sisters have. I've
Okay.
seen it online.
But is there a
might know.
rivalry between you and your sister because two poets in the same family?
Yeah, I think we worked that through. I think we've found a good way to channel that into revelry rather than rivalry. But sometimes funny things happen, like people ask when we've been, performing together. People ask questions, and we have two different answers, and then it's like, wait a minute, what? So the rivalry comes through anyway. The old habits die hard. But she's not my only sibling, so I have other, I have two other people I can be rivalrous and revelrous with.
Now, do you consider yourself a page or a stage? Do you consider yourself a stage poet at all, or a page poet primarily?
That's a good question, because I started in performance art when I went to grad school at Columbia College in the now extinct, I am so sad to say, inter-arts program that Suzanne Cohen-Lang started there like 35 years ago or something. It was fantastic. So I went there in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah. And so I wrote for performing and memorized those pieces, but I am not particularly good at memorization. So it takes a long time for me to memorize something. So yeah, I think I'm more of a page, but I have done a lot of performance work
So
too.
you've had some, let's say, formal training in doing performance art. Was that formal training in doing spoken word performance poetry? Type of thing?
It didn't set out that way, but that is what I ended up doing, is writing poetic prose pieces that then I would act out. And the last one I did was actually a collaboration with my husband, Doug Chamberlain, and then two good friends, Marty Saali Raymond and Stacy Jaffe. And so we developed a piece together called Somewhere Under the Table that we performed at the Rhino Fest at Prop Theater.
Okay.
And I'm also sad to say that because of COVID, that's been one of the casualties, is that Prop Theater has closed its doors. So sad about that. I love that space.
And the Rhino
And it was
Fest would
great to
go,
hear about,
to
oh, I'm
go
sorry.
the Rhino Fest would go 2 days straight there too. They'd be
Oh,
doing
yeah.
stuff at 3 o'clock in the morning, just one piece after another, and
Yeah.
it was like a theater performance immersion. That's what was just astounding about it, really.
Yeah, it
Um,
ended up being like 2 weeks long the last few years. It was really incredible.
uh,
Longest running fringe art festival in the country.
that
And then I also used to perform at Lynx Hall and places that you've been talking with the other poets about, and Heartland Cafe, $3 Poets, open mics with
mm,
John Stars. Um, so, yeah,
John
and
Stars
Main Gallery and
John
a lot of
Stars
these
used to
places.
do the coffee house on Roscoe Avenue, and then he did that other coffee house up on Broadway, north of the Green
Yeah.
Mill.
Yeah,
One-
Coffee Chicago.
Coffee Chicago.
Yeah,
Coffee
and my
Chicago.
husband Doug used to play keyboards sometimes for the poets. Used to
Oh,
back the poets
okay.
improving. So yeah, you probably know each other. We've got computer problems, so he can't be watching this at the same time. But anyway, he'll hear this from the other room.
John Stars was another one of those really influential poets who brought so many people together and gave so many people the
Absolutely.
opportunity to perform. I mean, and the stuff that he did with David Hernandez was fantastic too.
Oh,
Um,
wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, and he's still kicking. He's still going strong and writing. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Linda Bubon is watching us, and your friend Sarah Ray is watching us also.
Yeah, Sarah's
Um,
a wonderful poet.
Wom-
You
wom-
should have her on sometime.
Women and Children First. Have you performed there?
Women and Children First. I have. Oh, wait a minute. I did do something there. I forgot all about that. I didn't even put that on my list.
Okay.
I forgot I have done something there, although I cannot remember at the moment what it was. It might have been an open mic. I don't think I was featured there.
Okay.
But in the last year, I got to perform in Sacramento at the Sacramento Poetry Center with my sister in our regard, and also performed. We debuted here in Chicago at the Edgewater Public Library, which was lovely. They were
Mhm.
just so wonderful to work with. And then I've read at Rude Awakening in Westmont, which a lot of people know.
Wilda Morris as a host. That's the
Yeah.
that's the monthly ISPS reading. I think they're still doing via Zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you don't have to be an ISPS member to read in the open mic. So if you want to contact Wilda Morris, she's right here on Facebook. You could do that and get into the next Rude Awakening reading. I like that place.
Yeah,
Like that
it's
place.
really nice.
What do you feel like there was a venue that you performed at a lot that you developed some of your performance style or performance or poetic material at, or a group that you owe something to with that?
Definitely groups. I really love being in poetry groups, and I'm an active member of Poets and Patrons and Illinois State Poetry Society, and I recommend those for people, especially because they're so reasonably priced, like $20 a year. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And also, when I lived in Kalamazoo, I had a wonderful poetry teacher, Donna Efland, who was from Chicago originally, and she was a dancer and a poet. And she had a group called Women on the Verge, and we performed. And that I learned a lot of confidence and a lot of forms, some of which I wasn't able to do at the time, but then years later I'd come back to them, and she just had just a wonderful way. She's died, and everybody misses her so much because she just had this wonderful way of encouraging people. Just a terrific teacher.
I thought she was still with us.
No, Donna, yeah, she did. She had a cancer that nobody, actually the medical profession didn't expect her to live as long as she did, and I think it was poetry and willpower that
See, poetry keeps you alive.
It really, really can. It really can. I'm reading that book by Kim Ross, and Saved by a Poem.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really a good read.
Who do you read? Is there any group or any poets that inspire you to be a poet?
Oh, there's so many. And I'll just say that during the pandemic, I've been doing a weekly class with two young sisters who are now 9 and 12 and are fearless. Like whatever I give them, they will try it. And so it's really helped me because I
I was
go
just
back to
thinking,
people.
you must be learning a lot.
Yeah, because now I've introduced them to William Carlos Williams and Emily Dickinson, Mary Oliver, um, and they will, they will try anything, and they just dive right in.
Right.
So yeah, so I've gone back to people that or Walter de la Mare, people that influenced me when I was a child, and as an adult. And right now I'm reading, and I really recommend this book. I'll hold it up. African American Poetry: 250 Years of Struggle and Song, and this is edited by the fabulous Kevin Young, who's such a wonderful poet as well as editor. This is a nice, thick book. There's a lot to read in here. So I've been reading, particularly been drawn to Ross Gay, and not just because he has my name as his last name. It would be great if I could get remarried. I would marry Ross Gay so I could be gay. But anyway, especially since you thought my name was Guy.
Yeah,
No,
I'm sorry.
anyway, I've been reading him,
I just
and I've been
typed
reading
too
Harriet
fast.
Mullen, who's fabulous and a challenge.
I was gonna read some Margaret Danner poetry tonight, because January 1st was the 26th anniversary, no, 36th anniversary of her death, I think. And she was one of the first black editor the first black associate editor at Poetry Magazine. But I wasn't able to find her book tonight in my rush to put on a show. But next week,
Next time.
I'm going to read some of Margaret Danner's poetry. So look
good.
forward to that.
Tune in.
But I was also intrigued by the structure of your book. I don't know if there's any name for the structure of this book, but when I look at a book and when I analyze a book, and I'm not done like ripping yours apart and coming up with all the DNA secrets that are in there. So I haven't broken it down to amino acids yet, but I will. I'm always interested in how a poet puts a book together. And when I look through a book, I'm interested not necessarily in the balance of the book, but the flow of the book. And this book has a really good flow to it. The poem, one poem flowing into the other one. And at first I couldn't figure out why. And then I was wondering why you have the different sections in your book. And there's sections in here, one called Red, one called Thread, one called Rusty, and one called Needle. And the more I look through it, it's like, well, why does she do this? And it's kind of, the poems are themed through the different sections. The Red section has poems that are either have something to do with red or have red in the poem. Same thing with Thread. And it's not necessarily like the Needle doesn't all have needle poems, but a lot of the poems are needle-like. And my big question to you was this book designed to be that way, or did you come up with a name and try to fit the poems into it? Because it's a great name for a book. So what came first, the concept of the book or the poems in the book? And I think that really contributes to the flow going from one poem to another. Martha Vertrees did a really cool book where she began the next poem with the last poem from the poem before. She would end a poem
like
with
the
one
last line?
Yeah, and it's some kind of French technique of poetry. And
What's that name?
Martha
What's that name again?
Martha Modena Vertrees did the book, and I want to say the name of the book was Martha, but I'm not sure. Martha has like 8 different books, and it might have been called Martha, Maafa, Martha, When the Night Becomes a Lion, but it could have been another book by her. But it has built-in flow from one poem to the other, just like yours does. And what that does to the reader, it drives the reader on to want to read the next poem rather than say, let's put this down. Now, sometimes when you arrange a book, you might want to have a poem that's so strong that it makes the reader say, oh no, I need to put this down and think about this. But yours is a real pleasure to read because the poems flow one into the other.
Well, thank you, Dave.
I like
That's
that
really
about
nice.
it. I like that about
I
it.
appreciate that.
But like I said, I haven't broken
yeah.
down to amino acids yet, but I will.
But since you asked me, was it the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
I'll tell you that basically I had the manuscript. I'd chosen 36 poems, more or less, and then it was my sister Anara's idea. Oh, wait. So then I had the manuscript and I needed a title, and I took the title "Red Thread Through a Rusty Needle" is one of the lines in the poem, page 30, called "My Mother's Keepsakes." I can't be on Facebook at the same time, or I would put in a link there. My husband made a beautiful video, and a friend who's a professional voiceover artist, Chloe F. Orwell, read this poem, and you can view it on YouTube. It's called "My Mother's Keepsakes." It's really, really nice. Anyway, it's a Pontoon, so there's a repetition through the poem, and one of the lines is "Red thread through a rusty needle," and I was looking for a title that would have some kind of vividness in terms of color, and I had an image of the book, this thread and needle on a kind of burlap looking background. That was what I saw in my mind. And then it was my sister Inara who came up with the idea that, well, why don't you take the four main words, red, thread, she said rust instead of rusty, and needle, take those as nouns and see if your poems could fit under those, that aegis of each category. And I found that they did. It was like literally laying out the poems printed out on the floor and working them into these four categories. And I felt like, yeah, there are poems that are sharper, so they belong in needle, and there are ones that either mention red or the heart or blood or something. So, so those two kind of fit easily. And then thread and rust, it was just a matter of looking through them and thinking, does this have a feeling to it that somehow it's related to a thread in my life or to rust or age or corrosion.
That
So it was a
Pontoon,
good exercise.
that Pontoon in the middle of the book with the structure in it. A lot of times when people try to write those, the structure overtakes the poem itself, and in that poem it didn't. It didn't. And you don't have a lot of form poetry in your book. A lot of it is more of a freer verse kind of thing, which is basically easier for most people to read. That's another reason I think that the book flows through really nicely.
Yeah, I think I won a Severian and I think a couple of Pantoons, but you're right. I have been working more with forms now that I've been teaching them, but you're right, more of it is free verse, yes.
And Sheila Donovan said it was a imaginative way to section your book.
She said what now? I'm
An
sorry.
imaginative way to section your book.
Oh, thank you, Sheila.
And Sarah Ray mentioned that it was a great poem and a great video that you guys put together. So you got some fans out there. Wow.
That's nice. That's nice.
I don't have any fans out there, but you do.
Oh, Dave. Yeah, so silly.
So
Dave, what would you like me to read? What are you in the mood for? Are you in the mood for rust, or are you in the mood for thread, or what?
I want you to read that pontoon you wrote. Okay. That pontoon you wrote with the boats, the two things that hold the boat up. I'd like you to read that, and I don't know what else. I'd have to look at the book.
Okay. Then I'm going to read you something new after that. But
okay.
Did you just say you want to hear My Mother's Keepsakes? Is that what you said?
I do want to hear that.
Pantoon? Okay, even though you can go online and watch it in a video and hear it even better from a professional voiceover artist. All right,
But
let me
you're
give you
kind
my
of a
confession.
professional.
Yes.
Penny Jane said she's read your book 3 times.
She not only has read it, she has like written notes all over it, like she studied it. It's such a compliment.
Well,
oh my gosh, you should see her copy. It's like completely, used in such a good way.
You have to break it down
really
to the amino acids.
She's breaking it down to the amino acids. She is. She's really, and I have learned a lot from our conversations, Penny. Yeah. She's another brilliant person.
And Richard Sheddick wants to know what a pontoon form is.
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Richard. A pontoon is a very old musical form from Malaysia, and it works with a structure where there's 4 lines, and you take the second and fourth line of the first. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get this right. You take the second and fourth line, and you move them to the first and third in the next stanza, and you continue that so that it's always circulating and flowing like that. And then, so look up Pantoum, Pontoon, and there's lots of sites that'll tell you, how to work with that structure. But it's really good when you're for like obsessive kind of thoughts or material, because it has this echoing feeling. So I'll read my mother's keepsakes.
Okay.
I have kept my mother's shadow on a hook behind the door. It whispers quiet like a cape draped around my shoulders. On a hook behind the door, a necklace my father made her. Draped around my shoulders, blue stones made of evening rain. A necklace my father made her. Scent of marigold still lingers. Blue stones made of evening rain. Her lullabies they remember. Scent of marigold still lingers. 4 dried out brushes in a jar. Her lullabies they remember. Driftwood and a yellowed candle. 4 dried out brushes in a jar. Red thread through a rusty needle. Driftwood and a yellowed candle. Her empty canvas on an easel. Red thread through a rusty needle. It whispers quiet like a cape. Her empty canvas on an easel. I have kept my mother's shadow.
Wow. You promised me something. Wait a minute.
Oh, bird. I have to read a bird poem for the bird.
What do you want?
Okay, well, I have a couple.
Poet, because she reads bird poetry, so she needs to read a bird poem. Okay, he's having a fit here. Okay, and I think you should read a bird poem.
All right, I'm gonna read a funny poem then. Yes, I will read a funny bird poem.
As long as it's a bird poem, I don't care. Okay. He's having a fit.
All right, this will calm him down, maybe. This is called The Cause of Crows. Cause. Hey, you down there. I'm talking to you. Listen now. I can tell you about finding things. I'm a certified expert. My kind are jack of all trades, collectors and catalogers, clever curators of clutter. Who do you think invented the knick-knack shelf? Here's what I have so far. 1 brass hinge, plastic soldier, missing head, 8 acorns, 4 really good twigs, 3 earrings, 1 red, 1 turquoise, 1 clear as water, 1 crab claw, 1 dime, 2 nails plus rust, 1 mouse skull, green button with black thread dangling, 2 more good twigs. So how about you? What have you found today? Hey, stupid wingless 2 legs. Don't you see this whole world shining?
You'll never bring me anything shiny. I'm not talking to you. You need to be quiet again. No, have poetry. No, no, you need to be quiet. I think he'll
Dave,
be
have you been
quiet now.
sequestered too long?
Um, 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 I don't know, but you too can go get schizophrenic. But shh, quiet. Um, what's the easiest place people could find your poetry?
I have lots of books. They can get in touch with me. If they want a book, they can get in touch with newwindpublishing.com. See poems there and get news and buy books. And I've been published on yourdailypoem.com, which
Okay.
is a nice service where you can get a poem a day,
Uh-huh.
And that's a really good site for people who aren't sure they like poetry. It's a good introductory site. Anyway, you can look up my name there or on Illinois State Poets or Poets and Patrons.
Are you in any of those distilled lives, the ISPS anthology that they do occasionally?
No, I don't think I have been. I Highland Park Poets, I was in a couple of their anthologies, but
Okay.
I don't think I have gotten it together and I need to do that this year. So
Highland Park Poetry
I
is
think I
a
did.
great organization up in Highland Park,
Yeah.
Illinois, run by Jennifer Dotson,
Yeah.
who's a really good poet in her
Really
own
good.
right. So what's going to be new for you in 2021? Anything at all?
Well, I was going to say, Dave, I told you that I had mailed you a postcard, but I haven't yet. This is the one that's coming to you. It has a cat leaping. Don't show the
Okay.
bird.
I'll feature the dinosaur if you're not quiet. Shut up. But no,
I can't believe I'm having this conversation.
Okay,
Anyway.
fine. You talk to her. I really liked your bird poem, and he never gives me shiny things. I'm glad you give your crow shiny things to play with all the time. Are you
I
done?
didn't quite get that. I didn't quite get what your bird said.
He said something like I never give him shiny things, and he's glad you give the birds shiny things.
Oh, okay. Good.
See, he has an accent even though he doesn't know it. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what kind of accent it is. He's kind of like a foreigner. They don't have them kind of birds around here. So you've been sending out cards to everybody
I've been
but
sending
me.
out these postcards that I make by cutting and pasting words, which really changes poetry because there's this element of randomness and I don't quite have control over them. But anyway, I've been doing this because people's mailboxes have gotten very lonely during COVID.
Yes.
So if anybody on Facebook wants a postcard, just personal message me on Facebook your mailing address, and I will make one for you. But the one I just want you to know, Dave, the one you're getting starts off with the words "Men, be taller."
Oh, I'm not that short.
It's not about you.
Oh,
it's just thought that was
but
so
everything's
funny to
about
find that.
me.
Men, be taller. That I had to write a poem with that. So anyway, I think I've done about 140 of these, and I don't seem to have any desire to slow down. So I'm going to be doing those for a while yet. Until everybody's vaccinated or whatever.
From a marketing standpoint, when you mail something, because everybody's sending out emails and everybody's sending out Facebook announcements and stuff like that, when a poet gets something in the mail about poetry, they take a big notice of it. So you should put a little ad for your book on everything you send out, because then there'll be
not
an
enough room
ad
on these
for your book.
postcards.
I'll put it on the front. You can't really do that. I don't know. Penny Jane said everybody needs to buy her book. It's great reading and one of my favorites.
Penny.
There is such a good spread of poetry.
That is so nice. That is so nice.
So in 2021, you're going to be doing more postcards. Now you do Zoom performances with your sister. Are those public performances that anybody can get
they're
into?
on YouTube. They're
Okay.
on YouTube.
Do you have
So
a
if you
YouTube
look up my
channel?
name, No, just look up my name or Sibling Revelry, and you should be able to find them.
Okay.
And there's a couple of those there. We're going to continue to do that. I think we're going to be doing something through the Budlong Public Library this year, this year, I mean. And I'm excited about that because I'm also part of the Budlong Writers Group, as Sheila Donovan is, and that's a very, very good critique group too. And your friend Dan Cleary, he's part of that. Can I read one new poem?
Yes.
And then
yes,
let everybody
please.
go to bed or whatever? Okay. This one I want to read you because it was so much fun.
No, it's not about birds.
It doesn't have a bird. It has the moon. Does that count? And it has singing. So, but I feel like this poem has been in me for so long, and it was so fun to choose the words for this. It just was, I just had such a good time with it. So I hope that other people like it too. And it did get an honorable mention in the Poets and Patrons annual contest. So it's called Mad for the Moon. I'm an unapologetic lunatic for all things numinous, lovely, and luminous. I'm fanatic for the fantastic, the phosphorescence of bioluminescence, the opalescent essence of moonlight in refraction, the knowing reflection inside an abalone shell, its lustrous, glossy gleams like the iridescent dreams of miniature moons, milky pearl planets, crystal spheres, singing bowls for the waning years.
I like the musicality of that. And just some of the lines in there. Is that published somewhere yet?
No.
Okay. You need to publish it somewhere now.
Okay, Dave.
Anyways, thanks for being
aware, but I'll do something about it.
Thanks for being on the show, and I will call you.
It's so fun.
I will call you sometime in the next week because there's a whole bunch more stuff we need to talk about.
Okay, Dave.
It was nice. It was nice. I know we met before, but this is the first time we ever spent any time talking, and
right.
and like everybody's watching us, like 1,000 people or something.
Really?
No, there might be. I don't know how many. I can't tell how many people are watching us. There's probably 100 that have watched us. They might have just tuned in and tuned out because most people, when I start talking, they just tune out. I don't know. I'm not sure why, but they tuned in for you. Anyways, thanks for being on the show.
Tuned in for the bird.
This whole show's for the bird.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay,
and thanks for. I was in good company. I really enjoyed the other poets that were on, and hope to see more of y'all soon.
Well, we have fun here at Puddin'head Press Live. Thanks for being on the show.
Okay, bye now.
That was Gay Guard-Chamberlin, and she's the author of Red Blood Through a Silver Needle, and she's the author of The Bloody Red Needle. She's the author of Red Thread Through a Rusty Needle. And I want to thank Janine Ravesloot for introducing me to that book because it's a pretty good book. Okay, and hey, Wayne Ellen Jones, thanks for watching. Mr. Boback, thanks for watching. And I think we're going to be back here next week. I'll read some Margaret Danner poetry next week. Margaret Danner was the first African American associate editor of Poetry Magazine, and her and Gwendolyn Brooks founded the Southside Arts Center. Who's gonna be the guest? Who's gonna be the guest? I don't know who the guest is gonna be. Well, why not? Oh, because I haven't had the chance to work on it yet. I've been very busy. You're too busy to do any bird stuff. No, I don't do bird games anymore. But I've been thinking about having Terry Jacobus on the show. I don't know him. But Terry Jacobus is a really good, influential Chicago poet, and he He was doing all kind of beatnik stuff before it was cool on the Chicago scene. Wasn't he a boxer? Well, yeah, he did some poetry, boxing kind of stuff, so we might have him on. Next week, I talked to him about it a little bit, and I'll talk to him about it more. Will that make you happy? Nothing makes me happy. Well, I know who you want on the show. Vito Carly and Christine Swanberg. Christine Swanberg is that nice lady who writes all those great poems. Yes. And why do you want Vito Carly? Because I want to have a pun out with him. Okay. Anyways, thanks for watching the show, everybody. And I'm going to sign out and go do my homework. And I don't know. Stay safe. We'll be back next Monday. And thanks for being loyal watchers and listeners. Go to the Puddin'head Press website, www.puddin'headpress.net or .com, but the .net is cooler to go to because it's .net and PUDDIN, no apostrophe, HEAD. There's no G in Puddin'head. But go to our website, buy some of our books, and thanks for being on. And Team Terry beat Gregory Corso for the first Slam championship. They had a Slam-like bout in Taos, New Mexico, and Terry Jacobus was the beat Gregory Corso. So he's and you can find that online if you want to. If you go online and go to the Puddin'head Press YouTube channel, Jeff Helgeson has a really, really good video from Heirloom Books, and the video from Heirloom Books is about Lucretus and and on the nature of things, which I read a lot of Lucretus to find out about Democritus and Leucippus, but about Jeff in his analysis of on the nature of things, really concentrates on the clash between the Epicureanists and the early Judeo-Christian ideas. So Jeff talks about the clash between them, and Jeff's been doing this is his 9th session of Jeff Helgeson at Heirloom Books, and yeah, he's been doing a great job with that. And this will be on YouTube if you want to see any of the past Puddin'head Press Live productions. And we had a great Puddin'head Press Live production on December 21st. It was our annual solstice celebration. And just the visuals on that are phenomenal to see. It looks like a WGM production from 1968. So check us out on YouTube, and check out on Facebook, Chicago Poetry Book Review and History of Chicago Poetry. And Terry Jacobus has this thing called the Jacobians on there. And now I'll search around and have some announcements, hopefully, for upcoming events. In 1 year is still doing events online. They're doing Zoom events. Anita Corwin is still doing the Buzz Cafe, Traveling Molly's readings once a month, and there's some other online events going on. And hopefully we'll be back to having live events soon, because everything's going to get cold, and then it's going to start to thaw, and then we're all going to be wandering around the streets again. So thanks for watching, everybody. It is January 4th, 2021, and we should be back January 11th, 2021. Thank you for watching, and it's been a long night, so have a good night. Bye-bye, everybody. Say bye-bye, bird. No!